Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 4:04 here on April 15th, 2024. And we're here for a CDA, Community Development Administration, public hearing on an update to our citizen participation plan. I'm joined by Rashonda Alexander, our Director of Compliance, and Dr. Tennille Rose Martin, Special Assistant for Development here at CDA. And my name is Noel Pfeffer, and I serve as Executive Director. And we are updating our citizen participation plan today as part of our consolidated planning process. And we'll talk a little bit about what is CDA's commitment to citizen participation and why we're updating it today. But to begin with, just a little background about CDA. We're a city department. We serve as a clearinghouse for a variety of federal, state, and local funds. And we're charged by Mayor Jones with deploying these federal funds to drive economic justice. By funding a wide range of public and nonprofit entities to build affordable housing, provide social services, and conduct neighborhood transformation activities. And I'm being told here that I should change my Zoom name here to reflect my name, um, Noel Pfeffer. Um, in any case, a big part of our commitment to economic justice is our commitment to community-driven development. But Tommy, if you could come here for just a moment.
Then
I'm not sure.
I don't want that.
I mean,
Oh, this is extra stuff.
all right, we're fine. It looks like it's presenting fine on the screen. Apologies for that. We had a pop-up on. I'm not using my own computer. In any case, um, so our commitment to economic justice plays out in a variety of different forms. First of all, our commitment to economic justice means that we recognize that equity is a precondition to long-term growth, that our city cannot grow until we've begun to heal the scars of segregation, and they cannot grow while half of our city is left behind. It also means that we can't grow just by investing into the built environment. We need to invest into people in order to drive sustainable change. And a key part of that is that economic development needs to be community driven. And of course, that's the root of our commitment to citizen participation, is to be an ongoing dialogue with the public. And here you can see a little bit about how we operationalize our commitment to economic justice in terms of there's a map of city grants and investments on the right-hand side, and a map of the city's economic justice index priority tracks on the left-hand side. And that reflects economic and health indicators, as well as a variety of other socioeconomic and income data. In order to identify the tracks with the highest levels of disinvestment and need. And you can see that our investments largely track across. But another key way in which this commitment expresses itself is through citizen participation, where we are committed to leveraging our funds through community-driven and data-informed processes, and inviting and welcoming citizen participation at all stages of the funding process. But this isn't just our own commitment, it's also a standard that we are held to by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, whose regulations, specifically 24 CFR 91.105, require all jurisdictions to adopt a citizen participation plan that sets forth our policies and procedures. And specifically, the citizen participation plan must speak to the way in which we engage in that dialogue with our public in the development of our consolidated plan, substantial amendments to the consolidated plan, and the performance report. And we'll talk a little bit more about what each of these is in a moment in the next slide. So why are we amending the citizen participation plan? Well, the most immediate reason is that we need to reflect the latest post-pandemic federal regulatory requirements. During the pandemic, HUD updated a lot of its regulations to provide for hybrid public notice or purely virtual public notice. With this citizen participation plan, we're going back to the requirement, which we've been following over the past year, that all public hearings must be in person as well as provided virtually. And in fact, we are now deploying hybrid public hearing procedures across our public notice requirements. But also, we want to balance flexibility with substantive engagement. Frankly, the current text of the citizen participation plan encourages us to check a box, but also makes it very difficult for us to adequately differentiate and distinguish major substantive changes from minor technical edits. And what happens is that when you require citizen participation for everything, which is what our current citizen participation plan does, it becomes very difficult for the public to distinguish what matters versus what doesn't. And that's why we've actually seen that while we do have good turnout for a lot of our public notices that involve awarding funds or providing details and technical assistance regarding funding opportunities, citizen participation at some of the public hearings, like this one, which don't have large dollar figures attached to it, get almost no engagement. And so what we're doing here is that we are balancing, again, that flexibility with substantive engagement by distinguishing what is a substantial amendment triggering kind of an elevated degree of dialogue with the public from what is a simple technical amendment. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. So in order to understand our commitment to citizen participation and where citizen participation can have the most impact, it's imperative that we understand our entitlement programs processes. So CDA receives about $25 million a year from HUD for a variety of funds. Actually, I'll explain the funding piece first. CDBG funds, $18 million a year. These are our most flexible and largest pool of HUD dollars. Home funds, $3 million a year, which are restricted for affordable housing. Emergency Solutions Grant funds, $1.5 million a year, which flow through CDA to the Department of Human Services and are restricted to serving the unhoused community. And Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS funds, $3 million a year that flow through CDA to the Department of Health and support individuals living with HIV/AIDS and their families. So the way all of these funds work is that we start by putting together our consolidated plan. So that's our 5-year plan where we tell HUD, in the next 5 years, here's how we want to allocate our federal funds. Here are our priorities. We want to build X number of affordable housing units. We want to serve X number of seniors. We want to serve X number of youth with after-school programs, provide this many number of meals through food pantries, et cetera, et cetera. That's our consolidated plan. And HUD, again, requires a community-driven and data-informed process to create it. An unmet needs analysis of what our city, what gaps are in our city's social service ecosystem and housing ecosystem, citizen participation, public hearings, public notice, analysis of impediments to fair housing, a market value analysis, and the strategic plan where we identify those goals for the number of various different types of services and development that we want to fund over the course of the coming 5 years. Then each year we provide an action plan that's submitted to HUD 45 days before the beginning of that calendar year. And so in November 15th, 2024, we'll submit our 2025 action plan. On November 15th, 2025, we'll submit our 2026 action plan. And what that says is here are all the programs we're funding and the amount of the units of social services and housing that we expect them to provide in order to meet the goals detailed in our consolidated plan. So the consolidated plan is a 5-year plan and the action plan is an annual plan. And then each year, 90 days after the end of that calendar year, we submitted a consolidated annual performance and evaluation report where we tell HUD how we did. So we tell HUD what we're going to do, we implement it, and then 90 days after, we report back to HUD, here's how we've performed. And critically, you're required, as shown here above, we're required to provide citizen participation at each step of this process so that citizens can have a voice setting the priorities and can also have oversight as we work to implement them, and can also have oversight if we make any substantial amendments changing our priorities. A little bit more detail about how our CDBG funds are awarded, because public education is an essential precondition to public engagement and citizen participation, but we spend about $3.5 million on public services, $400,000 on homeowner assistance, about $2 million in home repair, which is another form of homeowner assistance, $5.4 million in producing affordable housing, $1.7 million in LRA lot maintenance, $530,000 in economic development, which is primarily low-interest micro-lending products, $1 million in rehab admin, which is our housing team, which administers our housing projects, and $3.6 million in other planning administration, which includes administrative funds for CDA, but also SLDC, the planning department, city councilor's office, comptroller's office, and others. And just some more detail about that $3.5 million in public service funds, but it includes youth services, senior services, food, workforce development, job training, homeless services, neighborhood beautification, childcare, reentry services, and more. And with this, I'll turn it over now to Rashonda Alexander, our Director of Compliance, to talk in a little bit more detail about what the Citizen Participation Plan requires.
Hello, everybody. As Noel explained, it's very important in the process that we engage our community, and in particular through public hearings like what we're doing today. At least 2 public hearings will be held a year, and more can be held should you require it. And let us know, because we do want to make sure that you are amply informed. And this is per HUD guidance of 24 CFR 91.105 Section E. We will address housing and community development needs, explain how the programs relate to low and moderate income population, which is a targeted population for HUD funds. We describe the types of eligible activities. So with HUD, there are 19 eligible activities. They range from public services, where you can go and get food outreach, to public improvements or relocation assistance. Those are types of eligible activities. We'll also discuss the status of other previously funded activities, review program performance, detail the city's plan to minimize displacement. That's related to housing. Get your views on community development and on housing. And then it's a place for us to receive your comments, what you like, what you don't like. Give us input and your feedback so that we can be better in the future when we plan. And then also, so we have accurate information of how you feel to report on to HUD. Noella mentioned that the annual action plan, the citizen participation plan, and then the consolidated plan, they all have some days that we are required to have public for review, and those are 30 days, with the exception of the CAPER, where we report to HUD. That's only a 15-day period. So this is the amount of time that you have once we post it into the paper to send us any information, feedback, or changes, or say you're doing a great job during those 30 days. And then after you respond, we take your comments into consideration. And if you give us the thumbs up, then we continue to move forward in the way that we have been doing. And these are also other minimum number of calendar days. Like in some slides to come, we're going to talk about the CARES Act, but this was another entitlement program that came out of the pandemic, where HUD gave us some more money and we had to do a substantial amendment. So that was 5 days, and that's because it was an emergency, more like an urgent need. CDBGDR is for disaster recovery, and we will be deploying these funds in relation to our floods that we had in 2019. And we talked about the substantial amendment. It's the same 30 days, but CDBGDR has the same minimum number of calendar days. Thank you. When you want to submit any feedback or praise or, places of improvement, you can just send us a letter or an email. Our address is here for 1520 Market, where we're having the hearing now, in Suite 2000. You can also call us at 657-3700 or email us at cda@stlouis-mo.gov. And so during all of our public hearings, we really encourage our citizens to let us know how we're doing, and with comments and also complaints. You can also provide written documents as we've shared, and all of them will be accepted. And it's a part of our citizen participation planning process, and it's a part of the record keeping and all associated with planning and reporting. So what is a substantial amendment? So this is when there's a change to the priority needs identified in the strategic plan. So some of our priority needs are affordable housing is a priority need. Also emergency shelter, community development. These are all of our priority needs. So that if there's a change where we just want to maybe wardrobe Rashonda, well, we can't do that without a substantial amendment in your comments because that's actually not an eligible use of funds. But those are when you want to do something if it's outside of the priority needs identified in the strategic plan. Also, it's when a new entitlement grant is awarded to the city of St. Louis. So when we talked about that CARES Act, where it's a 5-day minimum comment period, that was an entitlement grant specifically for the pandemic. And so we had to do a substantial amendment to say, hey, St. Louis, we have new money and we're telling you about it right now. So let us know how you want us to use it and what you want us to do with it. And so that's why we had to do a substantial amendment. You also want to do it when there's another eligible activity that's not previously included in your annual action plan. So normally you will see in our action plan, public services, you'll see public improvement dollars. This year, you're going to see new eligible activities. And if we are to depart from something that we told you we were going to do by way of an eligible activity, one of the 19 eligible activities, we will need to do a substantial amendment. The other time we do a substantial amendment is if there's a change within 10% over what we were allocated for that program. So, and this is all in accordance with federal law 24 CFR 91.105. And it's in accordance with CFR 91.505 that determines that the following changes that I just talked about are inherently substantial and required. CDBG-DR is our newest entitlement funding source. And our team member, Tom Nago, created this public website specifically for it. It permits individuals and entities that are awaiting assistance to see how grant funds are used and administered, including copies of all relevant documents, administrative contracts, details, and other procurement processes. Specifically the CDBG action plan and amendments to the plan. The website includes the CDBG-DR action plan, a performance report, a citizen participation plan, procurement policies and procedures, and a summary of the status of goods and services that are currently being procured by the grantee or the subrecipient. So CDBG-DR is, it runs basically just like HUD, but it's another entity specifically for disaster recovery. Also go to the site if you know anyone that was affected, and please take our needs assessment survey. Funding availability. So when requests for funds or notice of funding availability are issued from HUD or through CDBG, ESG, home and HOPPA programs, the city provides an advance notice. This is at least 1 day prior to us issuing that notice of funding. And we post a tentative funding timeline. So you have all of the dates in advance on the website. And then the dates include times where we'll have our workshops and also when funding decisions will be made. We will provide one technical assistance workshop, and then we post the funding recommendations on the city's website. The open application period from date of notice is a minimum of 30 days. And an example were our neighborhood transformation grants that you see here listed. In our section of monitoring, we have an awesome group of team members who provide technical assistance to our subrecipients and our partnering agencies. And our goal is to help provide financial feasibility guidance during the CDBG funding cycle, also to refer applicants to other public and private agencies where they can garner more funding to support the community. We want to be able to assist in defining your proposal and outlining specific information to gather and including your proposal. We also help agencies prepare basic concepts of their descriptions, which are KPIs, key performance indicators that we arrange in the form of criteria and outputs. And then to provide a review of municipal application for completeness and just making sure that what you submitted to receive HUD funding is in fact compliant. And so we provide technical assistance to just help usher that in, so we're all doing what we're supposed to do with the HUD Development Act of 1974 funding source dollars. So yeah, environmental reviews are required by HUD. And this is just to make sure that any project that, from something that's administrative all the way to something where it's ground disturbance, does not adversely affect the environment, which is a HUD requirement. And then it's also, in certain instances, we implement activities on the behalf of the recipient. We assist in providing solicitation and the contracting process with hiring and personnel. We also help serve as a mediator sometimes with our agencies, and in essence, just help with grant workshops and the success of our nonprofit organizations. We want you to subscribe to the CDA's newsletter. We really appreciate your comments and times and feedback. So thanks for being with us today. And if anybody's here, it's your time.
I'm going to make some quick concluding comments before turning it over to any members of the public. And that's just to say that we at CDA strive to be transparent, accountable, and responsive. We've worked to demonstrate that commitment in our most recent round of funding opportunities, where you saw new funding opportunities for neighborhood plan implementation, vacant unit turns, and small grants for capacity building and vacancy to vibrancy, all of which respond to priorities that we've heard from our community. And a lot of this started with a big survey that received over 5,000 responses from the mayor's office back in mid-2021 that detailed that the public's number one priority was neighborhood transformation. And that's what our top priority is here at CDA as well. The last point that I want to make is that the citizen participation plan is a floor, not a ceiling. And we are committed to whenever the situation calls for it, for whatever unforeseeable circumstance we might not have in the citizen participation plan, to being in, again, an ongoing dialogue with the public. That's why, even though it doesn't show up anywhere in the citizen participation plan, we have convened a community advisory committee to support our consolidated planning process. And one of the big priorities of our consolidated planning process is democratizing CDA, making our funding opportunities more accessible, lowering those barriers. And so we're very excited to continue that conversation with our community advisory committee. All those meetings will be public, and even though we did randomly select 9 members to participate or to be delegates on that advisory committee, it's open to the public. If you have thoughts, if you have ideas, if you want to participate in our consolidated planning process, we will be meeting monthly, and excited to continue that conversation with you. And finally, we also engage with the public through surveys. Again, that's not something that shows up in the citizen participation plan, but it's something that we do regularly as part of our disaster recovery planning process, as part of our consolidated planning process, and that we'll continue to rely on as a tool. And really welcome your ideas, because the last point to make is that what we're presenting today is a draft citizen participation plan, and it may change further as a result of public input and feedback. So with that, I'll turn it over to the public. And this is a great example of why it's so important to really distinguish between substantial amendments and technical amendments, and why we're excited about this change, because while we did have a single attendee on earlier in the meeting, it looks like we've now dropped back down to 0. So I'm going to pause another few seconds in case there's anyone following along on YouTube, or anyone who wants to make any comments, but if not, we'll, I'll thank my team for their time and for their commitment to this work. And we'll wrap up this public hearing. All right, with that, we'll adjourn this public hearing. Thank you all very much.
You know,